Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hi. Hello. My name is Elizabeth Carter, and welcome to a very special ICB webinar with the Sage Futrli by Sage team. We're really glad you could join us today. A few bits of housekeeping for you that we are recording this webinar, and we'll share the recording afterwards as well. Please feel free to ask questions. Please say hello to us in the chat. We like to know where you are. The team have got a really good demo for you today, and what we like more than anything is when we have our bookkeepers on to explain how they use the product as well. So everybody knows Chris Downing, but also we've got Tim Chilstone from TCS in Guernsey, and Ron Pearson from Sage as well. And they're going to talk to you through a bookkeeper's guide to forecasting reporting. You can see it. We're really pleased to have Sage here. Sage are our lead sponsors also for the Inspire tour that we've got coming up in the next 6 weeks. So we kick off in Edinburgh, and then we're visiting Leeds and Birmingham, Peterborough, at Bristol and London, as well as a virtual event. So if this isn't enough Chris Downing for you, please do log on and register. We'll make sure we put some links into the Bookkeepers Inspire tour as well. But I'll leave you guys to it.
Thank you very much. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar all about forecasting and reporting services. And I think this is a really important topic because I don't know about you, every time I speak to a small business, and especially when I was back in practice, they always wanted more. But the challenge is, how do you deliver that more? We usually get stuck within spreadsheets, trying to pull off reports from Xero, QBO, and Sage, put them together. But actually, how do we do this at scale? How do we do it efficiently? But also, what do we charge for it? Because I think these are quite invaluable services. So what we'll do for the next half an hour, 40 minutes, actually sort of unpick some of my thinking, my experiences, bring to life what Tim does with his practice and the opportunities. And then Ron will actually show a little bit what we can do with Futrli. But really, I think the key thing is it doesn't matter how you deliver your reports, your budgets, or your forecasts. It's actually having a bit of theory behind it and really understanding the value. But also, more importantly, do clients actually recognize the value from doing something slightly differently and thinking about those blockers? So we're going to have a quite sort of a fluid conversation this morning, bring some practical aspects to it, but also show a bit of product because everyone understand what you can do with something. So before we sort of go into the more detailed bits and pieces, we need to be thinking about the fact that every business sees something slightly differently. They need to look at their numbers. Yes, they need to look at their sales ledger. They need to look at their P&L. But also it's a case of what are they reporting against? Do they have an idea of what the future is going to behold over the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? Do they have a budget in place? And then when you're reporting this, how do you report upon it? Are you exporting data from a solution, or are you having to compare it to Excel? But more importantly, why do we do this? And really, it's a case of the fact that every business is going through some sort of growth. And going through that growth is all about the stepping stones, rising to a slightly different level. But fundamentally, it's not about just reporting the numbers or getting the VAT return out. It's the fact they need the information to actually make informed decisions. They're thinking about the future, the next 6 months or maybe 5 years, whether that's to grow the business or have an actual exit strategy. But also it's the fact that they think about how do they be more efficient. Everyone's watching the bottom line. Everyone's trying to think how to make better use of their staff or the people they employ. They're thinking about opportunities of new revenue. But also sometimes horrible things happen. Maybe a major customer disappears, maybe the fact that a key employee leaves, or maybe at some point in time we all have to work from home and suddenly we need to realize we need to do something different. So it's a case of that crisis management. These are all the themes why businesses need to do reporting and why people need to plan for the future. But how many businesses don't do this? So Tim, from your experience, how important is this to the clients when you're having a conversation with them about doing more than just a trial balance or a P&L from a piece of software?
It's really important, especially for a lot of our clients are in sort of high turnover, like cash-based businesses, hospitality, retail. Obviously, when I say cash, it doesn't necessarily mean actual cash, but that kind of sort of fluid income that isn't necessarily the traditional sales ledger cycle that a lot of B2B businesses would have. And for them to be able to forecast and understand like what's been happening and what's going to happen based on sort of their sales and everything else in the business is incredibly important, because in that type of business, a misstep of 3 or 4 days can really cause an enormous knock-on effect.
And I think this is the whole point. It's just removing the anxiety of any sort of financial risk, isn't it? And be honest, most people dream or have nightmares or lose sleep around not being able to pay employees or paying the next supplier bill or the VAT returns. And really, that's a complete distraction to what business owners do best, which is running their business. And I think as bookkeepers, you're closest to the numbers than anyone else. You also see an experience from working with other business owners themselves. So what you have locked in your mind and also your commercial acumen is incredibly powerful, but actually it's bringing it to life and showing that to the client as well.
Yeah, it's being able to show them like what's happening when things are going well and what's happening when things are going badly. And those two things are just as important, because if you're having a bit of a temporary little cash flow crisis and you need to work out, okay, what can I actually pay and what do I need to maybe have a conversation with a supplier to defer by a week or something like that, you need to be able to use like sort of what if scenarios and say, okay, so what if I do this? What will happen if I do that? Instead of just lying awake at 3 a.m. worrying about whether you're going to be able to pay your staff or not.
Yeah, and are you seeing that a lot of business owners, they are thinking about growth? I think we're, despite all the challenges we have, the economy and everything else that goes with it, people are always striving to grow in some shape or form, and whether that's to take on a new revenue line, think about employing new people, and at the moment when they're thinking about that planning, how do they do so? Is it put into one side how you do it today, but actually a lot of business owners, they're probably just doing things on the back of a napkin, not using Excel properly, and probably not even understanding the relationship between profit and maybe paying off debt or paying themselves. It's a case of that cash flow is all part and parcel of everything, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of the, I mean, especially I'll continually use hospitality as an example because that's the industry that we most closely work with. But it's a great example because people will say, oh, you know what, if I got a pizza oven, I could start doing pizzas and I could take an extra $5,000 a week. And then they go, I'll say, how much pizza oven do I need for this? Oh, I need this one, it's $8,000. Have I got $8,000 in the bank right now? Yes. And then they go ahead and they buy it. And that's how they've traditionally done it. And then they worry about the fact that actually they were supposed to pay the rent with some of that $8,000. And for us, it's a case of trying to educate them to be a bit more strategic about those decisions and finding a way to help them do that and say, yeah, okay, actually, maybe you can take another $5,000 a week if you start doing pizza, but you're going to have to wait 4 weeks in order to start doing that.
Yeah.
Because you don't have $8,000 to spend on this pizza oven right now.
No, I remember a classic client who would do their own budgets and they'd basically be a millionaire in 12 months' time. But they were basically trying to sort of take out more money now, even though they hadn't made it. And then they wonder why they've run out of cash. And I think that's the whole point. Sometimes having the reports is actually sort of keeping people to the plan, but also actually safeguarding themselves from making mistakes and errors and overstretching themselves. You almost need something to as a barrier, as a blocker, to actually sort of doing things which are out the norm or wrong or irregular in terms of cash flow. But also you finding you're getting closer to, let's say, those conversations for alternative funding, because traditionally that would have been the bank manager, but we don't have very few of those. But obviously having that sort of ability to do the reports and work with a third party probably brings you closer to the client as well.
Yeah, definitely. And especially, I mean, this is probably quite specific to us in the Channel Islands, because we tend to, if people need funding, they tend to use independent lenders that are based in the Channel Islands. There's one particular one who are actually expanding out into the UK. They're already in the Isle of Wight and they're sort of moving slowly northwards. And they work with specifically small and medium independent businesses, and they actually look at the actual data and the forecasts and the sort of historical reporting provided by bookkeepers rather than just credit scoring. So this kind of thing is absolutely invaluable for that, because without this information, without the proper reporting and forecasting, then it doesn't matter how good your credit is, it doesn't matter how much money you've made in the last year, they're not going to be interested.
No, of course not. So really it's a case of business reporting is more than just, let's say, showing the business owner how to drive more profit or reduce costs or increase sales. There are sort of some fundamental aspects in terms of actually, we almost have a duty of care to actually extend our role to be doing these sort of themes. And when it comes to the duty of care, it's actually what else is in it for us. As I'll put my hat on, I'll pretend I'm a bookkeeper for a bit, but it's a case of actually providing additional services to your clients. It's the expectation that clients do want more, and it's the ability to deliver that as well. But also it's the opportunity to actually maybe thinking about if you're wanting to actually be more profitable as a practice. Sometimes, how do you do that? Do you increase your prices? Do you win more clients? Or actually, do you drive more value from your existing clients, actually deliver them more, charge a reasonable fee, which also makes them sticky? But also, it's the fact that having the right sort of information actually opens up the channel to actually have deeper conversations. And it's knowing that client in terms of not just how they want to trade, but also what are their personal aspirations. Are they thinking of trying to pay off their personal mortgage in 5 years? And that's going to be one of the drivers in terms of maybe being more profitable, driving certain cash flow out. Do they want to be retiring? And basically having those conversations that sometimes can be quite difficult. But if they've got a plan or a budget or a forecast or some sort of theory in terms of where they want to be, it basically forces that conversations and have the Q&A. But also the fact that if one has reports, I think it creates new habits and behaviors with the client to behave better, because quite usually, normally it's a fact of some of the barriers to actually getting the bookkeeping done all time, or having at least, let's say, a 2-week window before the VAT liability is due, is because maybe the client hasn't given you all the information. But if they've actually got reports which they can actually look at, it gives them insights, it drives them to be a little bit more quizzical about their own business and the numbers. If one of the barriers to that is actually them delaying information to you to actually process, it'll actually drive them to make the whole process a little bit tighter. So are you finding, what was that point in time for your practice, Tim, when you realized, right, we're doing the compliance, we're doing the reports, we're doing the bookkeeping, but actually the value of doing something else actually brought more value to you as a practice, but also maybe drove growth, but also that's retention as well?
Honestly, like when it was a bit of a sort of light switch moment for me, because I was in the early days, I was sitting with a particular client, and I was just messing around with Futrli actually, and with a couple of other solutions, and because we were running over this guy's like P&L and everything like that, and then I just said, oh, like, let's see what this looks like. Knocked up a couple of quick reports that are a lot more visual, and gave him a much easier overview of his business, basically, and made more sense to someone who's maybe not as financially literate as we all are as bookkeepers. And the first thing he said was, oh, that's pretty. And the second thing he said was, what if I wanted something like this on a fortnightly basis? How much extra would that cost me?
And that's a perfect conversation, because they're coming to you saying, I want this. And it's right. And it's a case of, well, let's have a think about it.
And at the time, because I'd only been going for like a year and I wasn't really pricing things properly, like we do now, I sort of said, oh, an extra 150 quid a month. And he went, yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, let's do that. I want the reports fortnightly. And I was like, hang on a minute. Like, there's something in this. Like, this is worth it.
So in terms of actually how these services have evolved, what's the leader now? When you're sort of meeting a prospect, is the prospect between the prospect about doing the bookkeeping, doing the compliance, the quarter returns, or is actually part of the conversation in terms of actually we can provide the reports, the insights to make you more profitable and more efficient? How are businesses buying into you now?
It's kind of a bit of both. For us, our main selling point has always been that, like, you didn't start your plumbing company or your pub or your cleaning company. You didn't start that business in order to do bookkeeping, right? So we take as much of that away from you as possible. We save you time, and that's more valuable than saving you money, frankly. But like, let's say save you some money while we're at it. So we provide like that sort of full service, and part of that is making sure that we're reporting and forecasting in a way that's easily accessible for those clients, that they don't need to sit down with, they don't need to set aside an hour and sit down with their P&L that we've pulled straight from Sage and understand, okay, what does this actually mean? Because we can present everything in a way that makes it really, really quick and easy to understand. One of the things we've done is implemented like and this is actually really hospitality specific, and it's a daily report, but it's like a traffic light system. It's like, okay, it's Thursday, you did 1,000 quid. Is that better or worse than the average of the last 4 weeks? And that's a really quick indicator of people where they're like, oh God, actually I had a really quiet Thursday, which is awful. What can I do about this? Which we can then help obviously advise on and sort of come up with some different scenarios for them. But that's what's really driving people to sign up with us. And that's what's really making us more money, is that like easy visual reporting that they have access to all the time.
And are you seeing that you're having to do less chasing of client information because the clients suddenly recognize the fact, if I don't provide information or share the reports or maybe the
Sorry, my internet connection dropped out there.
Don't worry. So
We're definitely chasing information less, because we will provide reports that say, you know, this, like, we're giving you the report anyway, but, you know, please know, we know this report's not accurate because we know that you haven't sent us any purchase invoices for 6 days. And then they go, oh, actually, yeah, really sorry, here's all the reports. So we still send those reports, but with the caveat that they will be inaccurate rather than withholding them, because then they really understand. They're like, oh God, actually, look, this report shows that I made 3,000 quid profit, but I've got 4,000 quid's worth of invoices I haven't sent in.
And I think that sort of goes in quite nicely with the fact that what we're doing is basically showcasing the outputs of what we do day to day. And actually that reporting then allows us to focus back on, in terms of how to improve the underlying business in terms of its processes. And those processes are just going back to what we do every day, which is actually how do we create a tighter system around getting invoices out and getting paid, because they have visibility of maybe changing in debtor days or the amount of lockup in terms of cash. They're now thinking about, what are they spending their money on? What did I spend last month or the last 3 months? How does it compare to what I expected to spend? What controls do I have in place, maybe for employee expenses? And then also, am I holding too much stock? So sometimes they don't know that until they've had the year-end accounts, and then wondering why my gross margin isn't quite there. So it all creates those conversations, which actually can be a little bit difficult when you're literally just looking at an isolated report. But what it also means, it creates a fantastic opportunity to actually have a project every quarter with that client. So you're doing the bookkeeping, you're doing the compliance, you're doing the reports, but actually this quarter, we're going to focus on, let's say, debt collection. What systems do we need to put in place? Which naturally means it's another revenue stream for you as a practice, but also it's something which is repeatable across clients, but also it's an also incredibly valuable service. It's using that conversation, it's spending time with the clients, and also they're going to see some real tangible outputs from it, because it's all about increasing cash. And also, therefore, are you finding that actually it's increasing that sort of a value to the clients itself, and those clients are actually seeking for that information too?
Yeah, definitely, because it's showing them things that they never realized before. Like when you say to people, debtor days is a great example, because you can say to someone, oh, your average debtor days is 15, and it just gives an average. But when you can break that down and say, okay, actually, do you know that 20% of your invoices are paid at 45 days or more?
Right.
And then you can look into exactly what you say, you know, how can you try and reduce that time? How can you make sure that less than 5% of invoices go over 30 days, for example? And the answer to that is going to be different to every client, obviously. But looking at really, I think that a lot of people focus on their P&L, and, you know, with accruals-based accounting, it's like, okay, cool, I've sold this person 10 grand's worth of stuff, so I've got 10 grand of income. But if they don't pay for 90 days, you haven't got that 10 grand yet. You know, and this sort of being able to track sort of a P&L line versus the cash line that's affected by it separately is super, super important. And again, especially like one of the big things that we've done over the past year or so is that in hospitality, there's often a bit of a, people have their busiest days on Friday and Saturday, and then their credit card payments don't arrive until the following Wednesday, okay? But there are plenty of card providers out there that will do next day payouts, even at the weekend and bank holidays. So as people's contracts have expired, we've worked with card payment providers to move people onto, if they need it, not everybody wants it, but for those that do, to move people onto next day payouts, which makes that's effectively your debtor days, right? And in that type of business, 4 days is a long time.
And what I will also touch on the fact of, from my experience, when I was working in practice and when I'm speaking with a lot of it, I'll talk about the accountancy space, is they concentrate on actually trying to get the year-end accounts out and the taxes. Even when they've got in front of them a set of accounts, they tend not to actually break down the cash flow. What's happened to cash in the year? How have you actually spent the profit? Whether that's been buying fixed assets, whether that's actually cash being locked up in debtors, or actually how much money they've had to go out to pay for the car loan or whatever mortgage with on the balance sheet. But actually, what's the point of that report or that explanation when they have access to it 6 months after the event? And this is why sometimes we talk about cash flow reporting in the future, but actually reporting upon the cash flow movements in the month just gone are probably just as important as anything. And a lot of people forget about doing that. They just present the P&L, as you say.
Yeah, I think it's interesting recently on a lot of sort of podcasts and other webinars and things like that. We've heard accountants saying, oh God, we actually need to be more up to date with stuff like all the bookkeepers are, right? And it is important because, if you've gone out during the year and spent 50 grand on, new computer equipment and office furniture or, kitchen equipment or something like that, then your P&L is going to show, oh, great, you made 55 grand profit, but actually you haven't got 55 grand, you've spent all of that. So it's really important to identify what's going on with cash. The other thing is like liabilities like VAT and things that are paid after the fact. If you're running, for us especially, and this is an extreme example again because hospitality and Guernsey, all of our payroll liabilities, our ETI and social security are paid 15 days after the end of the quarter. Now, if you're running a monthly payroll or a weekly payroll, that expense, you've already recorded that. So you're like, oh, great, I've spent that, that's gone, I still made a profit. But you need to understand that you actually need to be retaining cash within the account to then pay that on the 15th of, in 4 months' time. And having someone manage that and forecast when you're having to pay these liabilities, and VAT in particular is an enormous one for a lot of B2C businesses. That's really crucial, because if you find yourself with a £10,000 VAT liability, but because you thought you'd made a load of money, you've actually only got 4 grand in the bank, well, you're stuck really, aren't you? And you have to call the poverty line, and they don't even answer that anymore.
So I think this steps into the next conversation of the fact that, Tim, fortunately, when you were, let's say, looking at the opportunity of doing more reporting, you're using a tool which actually delivering something quite pretty and insightful, which basically got that light bulb moment, not for yourself, but also your clients say, I want that, I'm going to pay you £150 a week for that additional report. But if you haven't got that as almost like a carrot, and you think about how do I kick off these conversations with clients about delivering more reports from what you currently get from the software, sometimes it's a case of why are clients not interested, and sometimes it's just the fact that they have a built-in thinking, the fact that all of this is too costly, it's too expensive, because maybe whenever they had a conversation with an accountant or maybe a business coach or something, they're coming out with a fee with 4 numbers on it, and it's a case of, well, where's the value? But also it's a case of they probably haven't seen the value from the first place, the difference it has to do reporting and understand their business better. And also, where do they start? Sometimes, okay, fine, it's if you're doing the bookkeeping regularly, there may still be things missing from the actual core finances, like is depreciation recognized? Has that usually been left to the accountant at the year end? Well, actually taking hold of that role, managing the fixed asset register within the year improves the quality of the underlying bookkeeping. What about prepayments, accruals? What about interest on hire purchase and loans? All of these things are usually left to the end of the year. What can we do to actually bring that as part of the daily or weekly or monthly process? But also it's the fact that sometimes clients have other priorities. They want to run their business and actually have a proper conversation about the future. Sometimes it can be difficult because they don't want to talk about it because it's cash, but also it's finding the time to do so. So if you didn't have tools like Futrli and maybe the capabilities of doing reports in a more pretty fashion, Tim, how would you approach these conversations with the client? Are they usually at a crisis point when something has to happen, or are you able to actually make it a bit more of the proactive direction with the clients?
We've been trying to be a lot more proactive. Certainly, that's definitely the better way to do it, because you don't really want someone to be in a crisis before you try and dig them out of it. You want to avoid the crisis. The real key is learning when crises are coming, and I think everybody has their own sort of niche and their own industry or set of industries that they like working with, and you already know and you feel what something bad is about to happen generally looks like. and that's going to vary massively across different sectors and things. But some sectors are affected by the weather, and some are affected by the fact there's a general election coming, and some are affected by just what so many different factors. But if you consistently work with similar industries, and even if you don't put yourself in a niche, everyone's got they get referred, so you end up becoming that guy that's really good at dealing with electricians or whatever. And what a bad economy for that sector looks like, and so you can be a bit proactive and say, right, hang on a minute, we're starting to see a lot of slowdown in the sector at the moment. Can we have a conversation about looking at what you've got lined up for the next 3 months, 6 months, and try and make sure that you're going to be able to sort of tough out this lean period?
Now, I suspect there are a lot of people on this webinar dealing with clients who may just be turning 50, 60,000 pounds a year, or maybe just over the VAT threshold. And I would like to say, are there any clients too small to actually see the value from budgeting or forecasting or any sort of business reporting? Because as far as I'm concerned, even probably the smallest businesses need a better handhold in terms of their cash flow, because effectively every penny they generate is going into the domestic pot, and they really understand what is affordable. And then they're probably unincorporated, and they've got their tax liabilities falling in January as well as July, managing the VAT. So therefore, maybe the peaks and troughs are even greater so. And so in your experience, is there no too small threshold for a business to actually be looking at and paying for these services?
There's nobody too small. The size of the business is just going to simply dictate the type of reporting that you're doing. If it's like a real small, like a 50k turnover, like micro business, like you say, then that's a completely different set of reports and a different set of forecasts than someone who's turning over 5 million quid a year or 10. Yeah. Different things matter to them, but it doesn't matter any less. The advantage of that is that with those really small businesses, you can probably provide this enhanced reporting for a lower fee, because actually it's going to be less work, and it's less complex. There's less things to consider, because a lot of businesses of that level maybe have 2 or 3 sources of income per month and 2 or 3 suppliers per month. Obviously there are exceptions, but generally if someone's turning over 50k a year, they probably aren't doing 100 supplier payments every week, so there's less data to manage. But it can be just as crucial, because also the margin for error is so much smaller, right? If you are turning over 2 million quid a year and your back of fag packet forecasts are wrong and you actually only do 1.8, you're not starving, right? But if you're turning over 50k and that's, if effectively you're a sole trader, that's your salary. Basically, if you're turning over 50k and you calculate something wrong and you end up only turning over 30 for the year, then you might actually be in trouble.
Now, we could talk about a whole webinar on this, pricing these services, but I think if we literally touch on it, because the whole point is that a smaller business has fewer transactions and will be easier to do so, but there's still value in that report. High level, how do you go about pricing for this at all? Is it number of transactions, number of line items on a report, the additional reports? So what's the overall sort of benchmark you use for pricing this to give a bit of confidence to those on the webinar?
I think, look, the annoying answer is it's going to be completely different for everyone, but the way
depends.
Yeah, it always depends, isn't it? Right. But look, I price this exactly the same as we price everything else that we do. How much time does it take me? We know what our nominal hourly rate is, right? I know how long it takes me to build a report with 1 page, 3 pages, 9 pages, a report with just a simple forecast, a report with a 3-year forecast, a report with LE-based budgeting, which is incredibly complex, which you can actually do in Futrli really, really easily. I know roughly how long all those things take. We've been doing a lot of time tracking recently as well to really sort of get those really, really fine. However, every service that we provide has like a value multiplier as to like what is this worth to the client. And with the forecasting, we've kind of been doing it as like 1.5x. So although we do everything at fixed fee, we don't charge by the hour. If I know it's going to take me an hour a month to work on this client's report, I'm effectively charging them for 1.5 hours, because it's got that much value, and then that leads to a conversation around it.
Yeah, I think Liz Carter's ears just pricking up. She's probably realised I've got a whole webinar here. Why should I do timesheets? And I think that's a very important factor to understand the cost of delivering the services, just as an idea. So I think we could talk about this all day, the difference between Excel and using software. So from putting my hand up, I was the Excel geek. I had a whole team who did nothing but manage reports based upon Excel, but with live data coming in from the accounting products. I was the win forecast guru, so I would do all the reports within that, but still export the data out and put it in Excel so I could do my graphs and my charts. But the trouble with that, it was all dependent upon my skills, teaching my team how to use those tools better. There was always risk in terms of not including all the data, plus also the challenges in terms of, let's say, fundamentally thinking about, do the reports add up, and is there something missing? Tim, are you still there or not? Have we lost you, or am I just filling in time? So I think what I'll just go through is the benefits of actually using software over Excel, because I think the challenge with Excel, one is in terms of making sure, have you got all the capability to do all the reports? It takes time to actually, let's say, add all the data. Now, these days, you shouldn't be, let's say, manually processing data into an Excel spreadsheet. You can, let's say, import it in via CSV file or have live links to the piece of software. But also the other thing is these days, we should be more collaborative. We should be able to share the reports that we've got in real time with our clients. And even though Excel 365, you can have access on the browser, there's always challenges that something will break. Your clients may mess around with it and you'd be destroyed and you have to start again. And this is why software, I think these days, whatever piece of software you do use for reporting is incredibly important. So when you think about, let's say, some of the features which Futrli actually brings, I think the fact that Futrli is more than just a cash flow tool. As a product, it's been around, what, 10 years now, and it was the cash flow tool. But the fact is, there's no point doing cash flow reporting unless you can do the basics, and that is management reporting. That's reporting what has happened in the month, the last 6 months, the last 12 months, breaking it down in terms of components, in terms of revenue items, improving that information, not just from the course bookkeeping tools, but also maybe additional sources of information. So, for example, if you're in hospitality, it may be the number of seat covers in that day or that week, the utilization of bedrooms. So all that additional data, which may not be in the bookkeeping tool, bringing that into the reports is incredibly powerful. Making those reports scalable, automated, pretty pictures. Clients love pretty pictures and graphs and charts. Adding the budgets, then also doing those three-way cash flow forecasts. And that's a profit and loss account, a balance sheet, plus the application of cash, and then also a case of what is the what if scenarios, be able to do those scenario planning on top of each other. And this is where I think Futrli now is probably the best product out there in the market, which does all of that out of one box. But all it does mean is you can do various components of it if you wish to do so. So it looks like the broadband link between us and Guernsey is broken, but I think the timing is quite good because it means I can bring in Ron, Ron has been very patient in the background, listening in, but also Ron will actually take us through a short demo of what Futrli is all about. Ron, are you able to sort of take control and share your screen?
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Tim is back, by the way, just in time to see me shine in my demo. Oh, you need to stop sharing in the
Bear with me. I'll stop sharing. There we go. All yours.
Perfect. I have been given the task of demoing Futrli in 10 minutes. So you're about to see a man speak very, very quickly because there's absolutely shed loads that you can do in this platform. Really always happy to be chatting to the ICB. I think bookkeepers are the absolute perfect people to get into a platform like Futrli. No one knows the businesses better than the bookkeepers. And also it means that the data going into the system is always tip top as well, which is one of the most important things when you're trying to get out those quick insights to your clients. To whiz through, this is what you'll see when you first log into Futrli and you get one of your clients set up. This is a home screen that gives you a landing page and something as a conversation starter with your client. So even before you build that first forecast or that report, you can start showing them the sort of the type of graphical information that you can give them. We've got things like our current business insights. This is an automated email you can get going out to either yourself so that you can be aware of what's going on in your clients' businesses, or even to them to get them just thinking about these things on a regular basis. And then other quick links that either help you navigate the platform or get you onboarded. So these guided jobs to be done, those are there to get you building your first report, building your first forecast and whatnot. And then all of our help guides down there. to show you what the forecasting looks like, as that's often the best place to start, because you've got to build a data set, obviously, before you then dive in and start reporting on it. There's lots of different ways that you can start to forecast in Futrli. As Tim said on a couple of different topics during that chat, it's going to depend on which client you're talking to and exactly what they're looking to do, as there's different use cases for all of these things. We've got a 1 year P&L only. That's perfect for a traditional budget. It focuses on activity. It's only a year, so it's not going to take you too long to put it together, and you can put that in front of them. We've got a 3 year cash flow. That is a cash flow, but it is also a three-way forecast. So it's got the P&L and the balance sheet information in there. That's going to be good for your traditional forecasting, setting out that 3 year forecast to start start your what if scenarios and whatnot. And then we've got a 3 year cash flow. Again, it's a three-way forecast with due invoices. This is for your automated cash flow reporting, for illuminating the next couple of months, using those invoices and bills from your accounting platform to give you accurate and quick to update cash flow information for your clients. In terms of what that looks like, I'll build a 3 year with due invoices, and we'll create that with the auto predictions. So Futrli is the only hybrid forecasting engine on the market at the moment. What I mean by that is that it combines what we call direct forecasting with indirect forecasting. Direct forecasting is what we're looking at here. That is invoices and bills information taken straight from your accounting platform and used to inform that short-term cash flow piece. Direct forecasting is great because as long as you're on top of your bookkeeping, which I hope you guys are as members of the ICB, it will be accurate. It's also automated because it pulls all of the information from there, but it also, because it is based off already won work, it's not guesswork like some forecasting can be. It's things you've already done or already bought, you just have to get paid for it. The downsides to it is that it misses some transaction types. Obviously, sort of money coming in through the till, nobody's invoicing for that. So it's going to miss that. Depreciation, salaries, things like this aren't going to get caught in it. And it's also short term. You're not invoicing or billing that far in advance usually. So that's where the hybrid piece comes in, because we also use indirect forecasting. This is done of trends from the P&L and balance sheet. We do that on a transactional basis. So every single transaction over the last 2 years, we look at it, we consider it hopefully through an accountant's lens. We're very lucky we have ex-accountants in our product team that have put actual accounting logic into the algorithm in the background, considers each transaction. Do we think this is going to keep going or not? And then builds out a picture moving forward there. What's really great about that is that we don't use AI for this. Small businesses don't tend to have enough data in them to make AI for this sort of forecasting accurate. We have an algorithm in there with that accounting logic that I mentioned before. And then also, because we do it on a transactional basis, it means that our VAT calculations are very, very accurate, because we're not lumping one whole account line in together with the VAT. We're taking it individually from each transaction that moves forward. However, it's not all automated. You can obviously affect change and whatnot in the forecast yourself. You do that either by managing your invoices and bills. So I can move around the payment date there if I want to. I can exclude something from the forecast entirely, or I can use my bulk edit update options to make sweeping changes. So I can update my cash flow very, very quickly. And then on the indirect piece, forecasting against different account lines, as you can see, I've got my predicted line here. We operate a RAG status on our predictions. Luckily, all of these agreed. But if you don't have the data in one of your account lines, for us to make an accurate prediction on that, we'd rather put our hands in the air and say, maybe don't use this one, than have you build your forecasts off of data that we're not confident on. So make sure that you're checking your RAG status there for your predictions. If there's one that you don't want to use, then all you have to do is you can toggle that off. And then if you hit new prediction, manual prediction, you'll see that we have lots of different methods for building out your forecast. What these do, these prediction items, as we call them, they just stack up underneath your account lines and build out the picture. And how you do that is completely up to you. My team, the enablement team, will guide you through how to do that. It, again, will be different for every client. You can either just stick in top line figures for that account line that represent all of the income or whatnot, or you can break it down as granularly as single transactions, single clients, whatever works for that business and the type of decisions that they're looking to test. What I will point out is we have probably the most advanced formula builder Chris will like this because it's all based off the Excel formula builder. So we've got if statements, sums, averages, everything that you need in there to build up as simple or as complex a model as you like. What I also love about the formula builder is that we have non-financial drivers in there. So I've imported shop traffic. This is a florist that we're looking at here. I've imported shop traffic. I can then use that to build out my model moving forward. If something changes about our predicted shop traffic, maybe we put up scaffolding outside the business and nobody wants to come in anymore, all I have to do is adjust my driver. It's going to adjust my forecast for me. I don't have to go into each individual account line and change that for you. There's a couple of different methods there. I am just conscious of time, so I'm going to show you the reporting as well.
Don't worry, Ron. You've still got a good 5 minutes, so show
smashing.
It yeah.
So in the reporting, we can either do PDF reporting. That's what Portrait and Landscape refers to there, or you can build dashboards that you can look at directly in the platform. Up to you. And again, different for every client is, are they tech savvy and are they keen? Do they want that 24-hour access to their data? Then we can give them a dashboard they can sign in. Do they want something going out to them weekly or monthly, landing in their inbox so that they can take that to a board meeting, show their stakeholders, whatever it is? Then you're going to want to create a PDF for them. There are shed loads of Futrli templates in the platform for you, as you can see, and you can filter them by what you want. So if they want to build a cash flow report, I can filter by cash flow, and I can build that in a couple of clicks. What I really love about the Futrli system as well, though, is, so as you can see, we've got a nice little cash flow one-pager there, a space for me to write my observations so we can get in that actionable insight, get the value coming out of the numbers, not just the numbers themselves. Then, if I add page, I can actually add multiple templates to one report. So I've got my cash flow, but maybe they're a highly leveraged business or something like that. So I'm going to want to get in some balance sheet ratios as well. And just for larks, let's get some profit and loss information in there too. Perfect. I'll drop that one in. Here it's going to ask me to map that to some forecasts that I've made before so that all of the figures can fill themselves in. So as you can see, in a couple of clicks there, I've made a multi-page report using templates that are already there, but it is still bespoke to my client's needs. I've still hand-picked the things I want to put in front of them. I've just not had to build it from scratch at every point. Building from scratch is nice and easy, though. Don't want you to think that that would have been any kind of chore. It's all drag and drop in Futrli, so you just drag things onto the page and then grab the little arrows there to move them around. We've got widgets, which are pre-built, mainly focusing on accounts payable, accounts receivable, customers and suppliers, that sort of information. And then we've got the builder here, which is how we can get in our more complex financial info. So if I drag and drop the visualization that I want onto the page, I'm going to make a nice little line graph for us. And then let's compare income over 2 years. So I'm going to use actual data and prior year actuals. To build this out, all I have to do is run my mouse down this column and double click the things that I want in there. So I've done actual data, prior year actuals. Chris will like this again because this is based off Excel pivot tables. What data sets do you want and what do you want to show from those data sets? And it's really that simple. So I'm going to bring in income, double click that. And then let's do that just over a period of months just to keep things simple. Let's do the last 6 months, why not? So as you can see, in a couple of clicks, yeah, I've got income prior year versus this year. So we can compare how we're doing. And it looks like this year we're not doing as well as we were last year. Oops, that's something we can chat to the client about. I know what you're thinking, Ron, this is just a nice visual, but what if I wanted to dive into the numbers as well? Easy peasy. I can just copy and paste that one and turn that into a table. Because another thing that I really like about the Futrli system is that all of these things are built in the exact same way. So once you know how to make a line graph, you know how to make a pie chart, you know how to make a column graph, you know how to make a table. You learn one system and you can apply that to any visualization or format that you want there. And it really is that simple. So once we've built out a nice report here that we want to put in front of our clients, the key thing with a system like this is because, you know, when you build a report for a client in Excel, great, it's done. But then applying that to the next client, that's going to take you just as long as it did for the first one to set it up for the next one. Not so in a solution like Futrli, though, because if I come in here, I go into my draft reports. Here's the one that I've just built. Didn't give it a name. I'm going to copy that to draft workspace templates. As you can see, everything's gone orange, so I know that I'm sitting in a template now. When I'm ready, I can publish that, and then I can use this multi-page report that I spent time making with my next client. So then when I'm going into that next conversation with them, and especially if you have a nice specialization like Tim does, I can start building out hospitality bespoke templates that a provider like Futrli wouldn't make for you, and then start using them across all of my clients. And that's 5 minutes. Told you I'd be talking very quickly. Hopefully we've got some questions. I'm sure you do. Please fire away.
Thank you very much, Ron. Really good to see that. And I think with Tim back, we'll leave it on the screen there. No point to stop sharing screens. I think it's a good time to actually bring in why Futrli and not Excel, which seems to be the go-to for possibly 90%, 95% of the profession. And I just wish I had Futrli almost back in practice, because my life would have been so much easier. Tim, from your point of view, how has Futrli changed how you do the reports for your clients?
It just takes away all of the work. There's so much if you're doing things manually in Excel. There's so many opportunities to do it wrong. There's so many opportunities to break it. One of my favorite examples of this always, this was from I would never do this, obviously, but it was somebody else, a previous job. They'd added 3 new accounts to their chart of accounts. They're really important accounts, but in their sort of consolidated month-end report that they were doing in Excel, they used a series of lookups and tables at a pivot table, and they forgot to add those new accounts into the pivot table. Okay, so even when they refreshed the data, because they'd selected numerous accounts and it wasn't all of them, they were missing. So they pulled the data in, the data was there, but it wasn't showing in the reports, and it gave them a really skewed. In that scenario, it meant that their net sort of revenue was out by about 25k. Now, luckily, it was a big enough number that we all immediately went, well, hang on a minute, something's really wrong there. It then took us half an hour between 5 of us to work out exactly what was wrong. In future, you don't have this issue, because if you everything is just going to sync directly from Sage QuickBooks Xero. And I think it is really important actually to just remind everyone that although it is now called Futrli by Sage, the integrations with Xero and QBO work flawlessly as well. So it will synchronize in a matter of usually minutes all of the data. Now, if you're running the same report week after week after week after week, once you know that you've completed your weekend or your month end or whatever, then Futrli will have just synced it within a few minutes and the report's ready to go. So what you don't have to do is remember, okay, I need to export these 4 reports to CSVs, and then I need to make sure that this formula hasn't been broken by the copy and paste, and then I need to make sure that I refresh the pivot table, and then I need to create a PDF from it, and then, oh, I haven't set the fit it to one page, so Excel's decided to distribute it over 98 pages, and so on and so forth. And also, if you were previously in the habit of just sending Excel reports to clients, if they're not very sort of IT literate, and especially now, surprisingly, you're seeing a lot of younger business owners, like people in their early 20s, that actually haven't got a clue how to use Excel because they're no longer really taught at school. This feels more sort of native to them and more what they're used to. And even if you give them, we have a couple of our clients where they have they have access to Futrli directly, like you say, if they're a bit more tech savvy, they can't really break it, because even if they do, you can reset it so easily.
Jasmine from ICB, I'll allow you to pop up the poll for a bit. So if those on the webinar are interested to sort of see a little bit more from Futrli, please say yes, and if not, please go look at the website and have another deeper dive. But with that in mind, Ron, there's a question from Karen in terms of, this is probably quite new to a lot of people. It's a case of they are doing the reports in Xero, QuickBooks, Sage, they're doing the profit and loss account, the balance sheet, but actually they want to do more. They want to basically use Futrli, get the best out of it. What support do we give to bookkeepers to get up and running and use the reports? And what if they get stuck? Who do they call? And I think that's really important to explain what's available as support.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got sort of 3 levels to it, really, that are open to all bookkeepers and accountants that come to Futrli. So step 1 is you will get a bespoke one-on-one onboarding with someone from my team. And that can be anywhere from a couple of sessions to a couple of months, depending on your needs and the package that you're on, and exactly sort of what support it is that you need. We have the support team that you can access from this little chat bubble down here. And you should see, yeah, Nathan, Matt, and Soman's shining faces there. They're there for you 24/7. Soman's over in Australia, so he's available there to even if you're working into the wee hours of the morning. And then, as you can see in here as well, we've got access to our help center. That is dozens and dozens and dozens of written guides that you can use to find anything you need. And we have a lot on futrli.com as well. We've got a lot of recorded webinars too, as well as live masterclasses every single week. At the moment, done by yours truly. So you can join that. It's not a recorded webinar. There'll be an actual person there. So you can get an overview and a bit of a deep dive into the platform, but also ask questions to an expert too.
Brilliant. We had a question there from Nick about templates. And you did actually show it in the demo, is the fact that you could actually produce a report. You like that report for a client. Actually, I'm going to use it again, because why reinvent the wheel? And I think that's quite an important feature of Futrli, is the fact that whatever you create for a client, you can actually copy and make it as a template and then apply to other clients.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest hurdles to people that are new to delivering these services is the idea that you've got to knock out the part version 1, right? This is an iterative process, iterative and evolving process. So the first report that you put in front of a client will be different to the second and third and fourth. Every single time you do it, refine it. What do they want to see? And crucially as well, what don't they want to see? Every time you put something in front of someone that isn't relevant to them or something, they're going to think, why am I paying for this? I don't care. So it's about refining exactly what you're putting in, and then the Futrli templates allow you to do that without having to go back to July's version of the report, tweak it. Oh, what was relevant to them then? You have a sort of a central working space that you can then add to it, remove stuff away, and that will apply to all of your clients super easily.
And I've got one last question, unless anyone else sort of pops a few in. So a question from Werner. I think we've been talking about the actual information and doing the reports, but clearly sometimes not all the data's there, and you always want to report actuals against the forecast in terms of reports. And I think that's another important factor. It's a case of whether you've got actual information from the GL, from the management reports, whether you have budgeted information or a forecast, and depending on what scenario of forecast, you can basically overlay any of those data points in terms of your graphs and your charts and your tabled numbers, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. So in both the forecasting side of things, you can input the data that's not yet recorded in the GL. So it world's your oyster really on what you want those forecast items to represent for you. So like I was saying when I was running through it, you can have that just represent top line figures, but you can have the prediction items represent specific clients, as Verna uses in her example there. And then so then what you would do is you can create from an existing forecast, duplicate one of these, and then you can amend that. And then in a report, show them side by side. If client A started paying 15 days earlier, what impact would that have on our cash flow? And you can do that in a couple of clicks by editing a prediction item. So absolutely, yeah, it's not just actual information. You can have the forecast show whatever specific question it is that you have with your data.
Brilliant. And that's just to say that's really, really useful for if people are applying for sort of loans and grants and things, because one of the common questions that you'll often get from a bank especially is, okay, like this is your forecast, but what's the outcome if either your revenue goes down by 10% or your expenses go up by 10% or both? And in Futrli, if you've already created the forecast, creating those worse and worse are still case scenarios, it takes mere seconds. And it's and as much as you think you might be really quick at doing in Excel, it's quicker, frankly.
Tim, there are a couple of questions in different directions about price and affordability. My clients can't afford it or don't see the value. I'll put my own personal spin first and my experience, Tim. So when I was back in practice, so I did year-end accounts and tax, and I had clients for which I would do monthly management reports and forecasting. And pretty much in every situation, what I charged them for the forecasting the management accounts was 3 times, if not 4 times more than I would charge them on doing the compliance, because that's how valuable this type of reporting is to them. They do not get it from anywhere else. They do not know how to produce it, and it provides that confidence factor that they'll be able to get through to the next VAT return, because it's far cheaper to have this service in place than having to find maybe expensive alternative finance routes to pay for the VAT return, or the confidence that you're just going to have enough cash to keep you going for the next 3 or 4 months. And I think in case of, usually we do not think our clients will pay for it because they don't recognize the value. Have we ever actually had a conversation with the client, say, would you like this? How important is to them? And even for some businesses, let's take charities, the trustees have a fiscal responsibility to understand the charity themselves. They need to understand where the cash is going. And effectively, to actually meet their fiscal responsibilities, they need to do additional reporting. So it becomes almost like a necessity, doesn't it? So Tim, from your point of view, those clients who, one, may have not actually thought there's much value, I'm not going to pay for it, do they end up paying for it? And what ways can we get around those blockers in terms of price?
They do end up paying for it, and the way that you get around that generally is that if you've got an existing client that you've been providing, a monthly P&L or something for the last 5 years, just give them this for free for 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
Right, give them their enhanced management reports for free for 2 months. Tell them that they're only getting it for 2 months.
Yeah.
Tell them that you'll have a chat with them about, and then take it away again. Yeah. And then on the 3rd month, they'll go, oh, do I not get that nice pretty report like last time? So, well, no, that was a free trial. I told you it was. You can be open and upfront about that. If they actually cannot afford, the marginal cost of an extra client Futrli subscription is very small, and the marginal cost of your time to prepare these reports, once you've done all the initial onboarding and everything, the additional marginal cost of your time is very small. And if your client genuinely cannot afford an extra, maybe 50 or 100 quid a month, then they're the people that need it most, right? Yeah. So then do you take a view that, okay, are you actually gonna, provide a couple of months worth of this for free in order to try and help them work out how they can afford it? Because if they can afford that, then surely you're helping them increase profitability elsewhere. That's the point of this reporting. The main point is to understand what's going on in somebody's business and identify things that need attention. And that might not necessarily be that you can help them fix those things that are causing them not to be very profitable, but at least it identifies exactly, why is this client so strapped for cash? Why can't they afford an extra 100 quid a month for me to provide this type of reporting?
Thank you very much, Tim. I think we could do another session just about pricing of these services. It's incredibly important. And as timing is always perfect, Elizabeth, hello.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. How was that?
It was really useful, and I'm just really grateful for Tim as well, because I think you guys will talk about this product till the cows come home, but Tim's there in the trenches as a bookkeeper using it. So we're really grateful, Tim, for your time. I think what I took away, as well as understanding more about Chris Downing's dependency on Excel, is that the idea that you don't have to be a massive organization to make the most of this. And I think, you can see the value. Tim, your idea about the freemium model, giving it away for a bit was really useful. So thanks, guys. We're going to wrap up now. We'll send a recording to everybody. I've always put a link in the chat to the Bookkeepers Inspire Tour and the Bookkeeper Summit, where you can get more Chris Downing, the whole day of him if you want.
And I'll be talking about artificial intelligence, the theme of the day, and it'll be practical. It's all about the how-to, the benefits of bringing the chat to practice, the opportunities, the challenges, and the what-ifs. So 45 minutes of proper practical generative AI, and I'll be honest with you, very few accountants are actually doing this at the moment. So it's a case of actually bookkeepers are leading the innovation, the technology theme.
Same old. All the talks are going to be very practically based, very workshoppy, so you get some real tangible things to take away with you. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time. It's great to see you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.